Shalom, I am Rabbi Shaul Praver. You're watching Rabbi Rock. Today, there are more Jews living in Eretz Yisrael, the modern state of Israel, than all of the Jews in the rest of the diaspora combined. This is the first time that this has happened for a very long time, perhaps thousands of years. The Jewish community in Israel is growing. The Jewish community in the diaspora is shrinking. In major American cities, there is a rate of assimilation of 52%. At this rate, our community will be half the size in 25 years approximately. Something needs to change. We need to wake up and realize what's happening. It says that the children of Israel were redeemed from Egyptian servitude on 3 merits. One of them was their manner of dress. They always looked like Hebrews in the way that they dressed. The second one is their names. They retained their Hebrew names. And the third one is their language, Hebrew. My point today to you folks is Hebrews must speak Hebrew. Jews are Hebrews, and we must redeem our language. This is one of the main driving reasons, in my view, that the Jewish identity is so strong in Israel is the language. A language cannot be underestimated as far as its power to galvanize a people into a people. Eliezer ben Yehuda, the father of modern Hebrew, took a sleeping language, a language that was a language of prayer. You might think of, if you're Catholic, like the Latin language was the language for the church, but you spoke some other language. For many, that's the way Hebrew was. Hebrew was the language of the Siddur, the prayer book, and people spoke other languages in whatever country they lived in. And Eliezer ben Yehuda came and resurrected, gave new life to the language, and it's the living language that's written, spoken, and all of the life is conducted around this language. People, Jews all over the world, are able to speak with one another in Hebrew. I have students that come only twice a week, but we are very diligent, and they can read and translate Hebrew. In all the synagogues throughout North America and the diaspora, we must put a great emphasis on teaching our kids how to read and translate, and in certain instances even speak Hebrew. How many times have we heard people say to us as rabbanim, rabbis, oh, well, the rabbi or the cantor, taught me how to read it, but I don't know what it means. Well, we have to teach them what it means. Basic grammar, verbs, usage, present tense, past tense. We need to learn the language, redeem ourselves with our language. And this one merit, if we engage ourselves and take hold of it, we can renew ourselves and stem the tide of assimilation so that we may survive as a unique people amongst the nations. You're watching Rabbi Rock. Once again today we have the great pleasure of having Dr. Herbert Ausubel, a dynamic historian. He's a medical doctor by profession and has also studied a great deal of history and is really a genius. I use that word genius with intent. I don't always use that word. And here he is, Dr. Herbert Ausubel, who's going to reenact for us members of his family which tell the story of the Jewish people. And the person we are speaking with today is David Ausubel. Tell us about your life and where are you now?
Well, where I am now is probably in the heavenly sphere.
Yes, sir.
But tonight, I am speaking to my cousin, Dr. Herbert Ausubel, in his home, where I and my wife have been invited for dinner. I am about to answer a question that he posed to me. Over the years, I had gotten some vague glimpse from my family of our common ancestor who came into Europe. You are more the historian than I am, and so you have clarified that subject quite well for me. It was Dr. David Ausubel, physician to Suleiman the Magnificent, who came to Europe when Suleiman and the Turkish army were conquering to the very gates of Vienna. It was Dr. Ausubel who then decided to remain in Europe after the Sultan died. I guess he was concerned that they might blame the Jewish doctor for the death of the Sultan, although he was not a spring chicken at the time. In any case, the family then settled in Budapest, which was under Turkish rule, and they remained there for about 100 years, at which point the armies of the Christian nations of Europe were attacking Budapest. The first thing they did on capturing the city was to annihilate the Jewish people. That has happened, unfortunately, all too frequent in our history, which emphasizes the point that the world must learn to end blind prejudice, and that it should become a tenet of every faith that we must respect one another. You and I, Herbert, come from a family that have continuously sifted the wind, watching for the coming storm. How else can you explain the fact that our family fled Budapest for the Kingdom of Poland just a few days before the Christian armies entered the city? So now we were living in Poland, which was a gigantic state. And when its neighbors, Russia, Prussia, and Austria, decided to divide up Poland, your branch, living in Galicia, came under the rule of Austria, where you received the insult name Ausubel, which meant out of evil. Our family, living in the Ukraine, which was then part of Poland, ended up on the Russian side, and so we received the name Ausubel in the Russian Cyrillic. And as a result of all this, I was born in the Ukraine and lived most of my life under communist rule. Now, you posed a question to me. Why in the world did I march with a placard in front of the Kremlin declaring that I wanted to emigrate from the Soviet Union? You followed up by pointing out, didn't I realize, after having spent more than 2 decades in the Gulag, after having been placed in a cell below ground in the absence of light for 9 years, and then been rehabilitated and risen to a great position and given a fine apartment in Moscow with access to a country cottage. Why in the world would I do such a thing? Didn't I realize that I would be thrown out of my position, that I would be beaten by KGB thugs and that I potentially could be shipped back to the Gulag to die? There are two answers I can give you to that question. The first is the short answer, and the second the long answer.